Hi, my name is Sandy Anderson, and this is the Budget Debacle Building Finance case study for EDL 854. Just a few of the background facts. Going through this, Mr. Santos is the building principal at Briardale Elementary. In their district, they have about 6 elementary schools. There's 2 middle schools and 1 high school. Each of the buildings have approximately between 400 and 600 students. This specific elementary school has about 600. There is a high staff retention rate, which means they have a lot of veteran teachers whose primary teaching experiences have been in this specific school district. The district adopted curriculums only address the very basic educational objective skills, such as, I would assume, reading and math, but that's not fact for sure. The elementary school education objectives that are stated by the district are all based on student performance on those basic skills, so they're not necessarily tied to anything else but those very specific skills. The buildings are funded individually for those basic skill curriculums. The supplementary curriculums, such as art and music and foreign language, are all kind of funded in a very unclear way. What this does is it kind of creates competition amongst the individual elementary schools within the district. There are foundations that are sounding somewhat similar to PTOs that are established at each building that are typically chaired by a parent. Those foundations turn over the funds to the building principals that can be utilized for those supplementary curriculums at the recommendation of the foundation. Supposedly there is a protocol in which then those recommendations go through that is called a site curriculum committee that they go through and ensure that it aligns with what they are teaching, that is ran by teachers within the building. Then parents have been supportive of the chosen curriculums in the past, and there has previously not been a lot of issues with this. The foundation for the Briardale Elementary has a new president, Mr. Barley, who is new to the area. He was motivated to bring in additional innovative programs for that supplementary curriculum, so kind of to extend beyond the typical fine arts. He previously attended Harvard with another foundational president in a separate elementary school within the same district. Just a little background knowledge, he was defeated when running for class president by this other current foundation president. Mr. Santos is the building principal, and he met with Mr. Barley to establish the expectations of the position that should include the fundraising, his role as a president, responsibilities to meet with school curriculum committees, and then the responsibility to inform them of possible influencing factors. So to my knowledge, these two sat down and had this discussion. Mr. Barley established a fundraiser of selling raffle tickets to win cash. He established how to sell the tickets, the foundation approved, the fundraiser occurred, and then the final drawing was occurring. When that was occurring within the building at Briardale, the sheriff was apparently tipped off that this was occurring, and it stated that the tipster also knew additional insight, though it was never said what that was. Mr. Barley was arrested that evening, booked and released, and then he was later convicted of a misdemeanor. I'm assuming for his raffle for cash event, but it doesn't specifically say, and the situation landed on the front page of the newspaper. So, considering legal and ethical issues, there seems to be a lot, since there was a arrest that occurred and charges that were made against the fundraiser. So, thinking about specific legal issues, my first question would be, is the foundation an established nonprofit? Because this raises a good question in the legalities of the actual fundraiser. Is the foundation a component of the school or a separate entity? What was Mr. Barley charged with? And then what are the current raffle laws? Not to say that my place as a building principal would be to be his legal counsel, but these are all relevant questions when considering if the fundraiser was legal or not. And I think there are things that should be investigated to potentially help the perception of the school as well as the funds that are generated. Considering ethical issues, curriculum funded by outside sources, that poses the question of equity. For me, that means that whoever raises the most funds potentially has the most opportunity, and that to me is an ethical issue within the budgeting of the district. Professionals are not making academic decisions, only approving. That would be where the parents are making recommendations on curriculums and supplemental resources. Then I think there would be a conflict of interest between the two foundation presidents just with their previous history. I think that is something that should be explored. And I'm curious also if protocol was established for acceptable fundraisers, if there was an approved and a not approved list, and if that was adhered to or not. Then, was anyone harmed? Student success and well-being is definitely harmed in this situation. Adult success and well-being as well, specifically when there was a person volunteering for a position to generate funding, and he now was arrested and faced criminal charges and probation because of that. Then also the professional capacity and culture within the district, I think, has definitely been harmed as well. To synthesize what has actually happened in a sentence or less, I think that efforts to generate funds for Briardale Elementary through a parent-led foundation resulted in criminal charges against the foundation president in connection with a raffle for cash fundraiser, therefore leaving the supplemental curriculum unfunded. Evaluating missing facts, there's a lot of them. Thinking about the people missing from Mr. Santos, myself the principal, the knowledge of types of fundraisers, the knowledge of how fundraiser dollars can be spent on school-specific items. I think those are good questions to ask. Facts missing from Mr. Barely, the actual criminal charges he was found guilty of. I'm really curious about that and what he was actually charged with. In the state of Kansas, raffles for cash are actually legal if they generate funds under $25,000. And so it's kind of why I'm super curious about that, or at least that's what I found through KS, the Kansas website when researching that question. Then I am curious what his strategy for selling tickets were, because that could pose like another legality. And then the influencers in his decision-making process. So what motivated him to utilize this fundraiser? Was his motivation to truly generate funds for the success and well-being of students, or was it to beat an old rival? Then also curious about the superintendent's curriculum adoption processes, as well as kind of the funding and budgeting behind making that happen. Thinking about the places, one thing to consider is if fundraisers do occur within a specific building, are they at all liable? Or do the activities that occur within that building need to adhere by the same policies and procedures in which the school has to operate under? So great questions to ask. Also, when they stated that lots of activities take place in the building at the community level as well. Then thinking about program or programs, that's kind of where I mentioned state law on raffles again. Where is this occurring? Because different states have different laws, and so it's necessary to know what state. That's kind of programs and place as well. Also curious about district fundraising protocol, district curriculum adoption protocol, and the depth of orientation with the foundation principals and consistency amongst the buildings. So when the principal did sit down with the foundation president, does that conversation look the same across the district when they meet with their foundation presidents, or is that different or skewed? I think that would be important information to know. So reviewing and kind of prioritizing the main things that we need to consider here is that the district only funds the basic skill curriculum. I think that's definitely something to consider. Supplementary curriculum utilized is funded by the fundraising efforts of each building. That means that the opportunities for students within different buildings will look different based on their fundraising ability. Curriculum recommendations are made by parents in the foundation. Curriculum recommendations must go through a site curriculum committee within each building of teachers. New parent obtained role of the foundation president and motivated to raise money for additional innovative programs. There was an established a raffle for cash fundraiser to generate funds that was held at Briardale Elementary. The foundation president arrested and charged with a misdemeanor and probation. So also to consider, we have a unfunded supplementary curriculum that we need to consider here. So potential action plans. Plan 1 would be to embrace the public embarrassment and move forward doing nothing. So that is always an option. Just say better luck next time, teachers of fine arts, you will not be funded. And plan number 2 would be to make a public statement declaring that Briardale Elementary had nothing to do with these illegal activities, to dissolve the foundation that generated those funds, to make a public plea for donations or support, to support the supplemental curriculum that was going to be funded, and to charge the site curriculum committee to research and establish necessary curriculums. By that I mean them becoming creative on how to fund these curriculums that will no longer be financially backed through the foundation's fundraising efforts. So, considering plan number 3 would be to contact the superintendent and other building administrators to communicate the facts of the event, explain to them what's happening. They all need to know we're all within the same district and this will, in the long run, affect everyone. Possibly suggest the restructuring of systems and budgeting to fund supplemental curriculums. Develop a district protocol for purposes of the foundation. Develop a multifaceted oversight approach for fundraising procedures as well as an audit of proper allocation of the raised funds. Generate possible avenues that can be taken to fund purchase of supplemental materials for Briardale Elementary. So still at the end of the day, they're not funded and they need to be. Evaluating the pros and cons of these plans. So considering plan number 1, it's definitely the easiest. It's easiest to do nothing. Considering the cons, student success would suffer from inequitable funding and access to curriculums, and the success and well-being of adults within the district could be compromised again in the future. So if steps aren't taken to evaluate fundraising procedures and how they're communicated, this could happen again. Plan number 2 is so the pros and cons of plan number 2. The pros would feel easy at first. It's kind of an impulsive response is probably the best way to describe it. It makes a statement to the community that the principal knows what's going on, so at least they're identifying what's going on. Definitely the cons would be the principal's not taking ownership whatsoever in this process. They are kind of just pinning it all on the volunteer who led the fundraiser. Student success potentially suffers with decreased access to curriculum, and then I think teacher success could also suffer with the additional added pressure of trying to find creative ways to develop resources for student learning. Considering the pros and cons of plan number 3, the pros would be to promote adult success through the protection of potential violation of legal boundaries. So trying to take action to make sure this doesn't happen again. Promoting the student success of all students through equitable funding for supplemental curriculum. So this would be kind of taking that district view on this specific item and how, depending on fundraising efforts, like the opportunities that students receive can completely look different depending on how great of a fundraiser they had. I think it would improve management opportunity through the knowledge sharing by an established protocol to ensure proper communication and prevention of illegal activity. So again, putting those checks and balances in place in advance to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Then also evaluating and deterring potential risk for financial misconduct. Let's not give people the opportunity to misuse funds. The cons would be it would require a lot of time investment. It would require additional strategic budgeting at the district level. Potentially it doesn't solve the financial deficit that's currently being experienced for those supplemental curriculums. And it could also deter parental involvement. Just being honest, they might be scared to volunteer.